to live off?
Risk.
I'm sorry?
The risk.
The risk is very important. In other words, what the security on their money is exactly, yes?
The interest rate.
The interest. So the servicing charge, what they charge you to have that money. So the security of the money, when they're going to get it back, and whether you can service that loan. Now, it's very important that they also like you as people, because people are very important to a business, but those are two of the critical things. And the point I'm making is that the business plan needs to reflect the fact that there's enough cash being generated in the business that it will be able to service the debt and pay it off. If you're writing a plan for angels, what is it that they are looking for? And it's a very different perspective.
For a return, actually.
I'm sorry?
From my understanding, they want a return within 3 or 4 years.
Well, not so important about the time period, but they certainly want explosive growth, and we saw at the beginning that might be 10 times in 5 years, is the sort of return that they would be looking for. So they're looking at the reward side of the business far more than the risk, whereas the bank is looking far more at the risk side of the business than the reward, because that is what drives them. If you're writing the plan for your internal people, for the people who are going to be working in the business, what is it that they are going to want to see in the plan?
The vision.
I'm sorry?
The vision.
The vision is very important, and we'll come back to that. Are there any other points?
Security.
The security of their job. They're going to be giving up, presumably, a job in probably a more secure company in order to come and work for an entrepreneurial company, and that's a very risky thing to do. How are you going to demonstrate to them that there's any job security in this job? Yes. Yeah.
So generally their future, but also increasingly nowadays they look for the values, and people want to sort of be involved in a business which matches their own values.
Absolutely. Okay, so the values that you have in your business and how it's going to be better to work for a small entrepreneurial business because you have those values, and a large company which they're leaving doesn't. But coming back to the point about vision, it's two things really, not just vision, but also passion, which I think is terribly important, because actually all the research demonstrates that if people have the choice, they don't actually work because they can earn more. They work because it's fantastic to work. And if anybody has ever walked into the offices of Cobra Beer, you will know straight away what I'm talking about. There is an incredible buzz about the place, and it is a fantastically exciting place to work. Even if you've been working there for 10 years, the staff turnover is about 2% per annum, and it's just fun. And therefore, if you're writing a business plan to appeal to the people who are working there, you have to bring out those issues. And therefore, just to say that you're writing a business plan doesn't quite work, and doing a generic talk like this doesn't quite work. But an awful lot of the points will be common to all of those three plans. But I urge you, before you sit down and put pen to paper, to think about who the audience is and how they're going to react to what you're writing in your plan, and more importantly, what they want to hear, because there's nothing better than finding out what people want to hear and actually spoon-feeding it to them. We're going to talk, a lot of what I'm going to say, is going to be about raising finance, because I believe that most of you during the cycle of your business will need to raise money. It's the nature of business that if you're doing badly, you will need working capital, and if you're doing well, you'll need more working capital. So by and large, at some stage, you will need to raise finance unless it's on a very level playing field the whole time. So that's the background, but where do you go from there? Well, the first mistake that people generally make is they make assumptions. Because you're so close to the business, you understand it terribly well, and you make assumptions, and you launch into this business plan of telling people where you are and just telling people about the product. And it's very important to set the scene by explaining where the company is now. Is it trading? Is it registered? How long has it been trading? How did it come to be in existence? How did it come from the fact that it's your experience, skills, and interests? So this needs to be just a putting in perspective of where you are, so that people, because people who read business plans generally have hundreds of these things to read, and therefore if they get bored by what you have to say very quickly, or they don't understand it, they don't engage with it, they will give up very quickly, and therefore it has to be spoon-fed to them. And the best way to do that is to put it in context. And this is a sort of a way of putting it in context, of telling people about who's involved in it, who the team are, how did it come about, and that will make it much easier for people to understand from there where the product, what the product is, or what the service is. Because this is where the second mistake tends to happen, is that people launch into this area, which commonly in books is they tell you that the first thing you write about is the product or service, and I think you need to be very wary of doing that, because I think you need to explain where the product or service sits in terms of market opportunity. And this is what people find very difficult to understand when they're starting in business or building a business, is that the product or service may be about 5% of what matters in the business success. And actually it's the market, it's the customers, and what the market opportunity is. How have you identified a gap in the market? Where have you identified a gap in the market? And then putting your product or service in context in terms of that market opportunity. And then you can come on to talk about the benefits and value, which we talked about quite a bit at the end of the first stage this morning, because it's by identifying the gap in the market and where your benefits and value fit into that, that you will be able to explain properly why you have a product or service which is worth having. So this link between the market opportunity and your product or service, as opposed to the product or service in isolation, is terribly important and can't be exaggerated. And it's because you're so close to the product that you find it very difficult. And again, as I say, I do a lot of work with technologists, with people in the medical field, who are very excited about what they've discovered in the laboratory, very excited about the research that they've done, and find it very difficult to understand that even if you have the best new mousetrap in the world, it doesn't mean that people will beat a path to your door. It has to be that you understand where that fits into the market opportunities. So assuming that customer benefits are self-evident is a very normal mistake to make. Yes, sir?
Sorry, going back to the point where we talk about the link between the market opportunity and your product and service, could you give an example? I'm a little...
Sorry, I'm having difficulty.
Could you give an example of how you would say link a market opportunity to a product and service?
Yes, the important thing is that you put the market opportunity first. So I did ask, there was somebody, and I've forgotten who it was, who I specifically asked how they came up. Yes, I think it was you, madam, who I was starting to talk about their service of accreditation, of quality accreditation. Now that quality accreditation could easily, that service could easily have been identified just out of the blue in a vacuum and start writing about quality accreditation, which in fact, to be fair, was exactly what the lady did. And what I wanted to get back to from that was actually how did that arise? Why did anybody think that should have? Why did anybody think that that was a product or a service that people wanted? And the answer came back that they had actually identified the market and they'd seen how the market works and had built the product or service from it, as opposed to building the product or service and then going out to try and